Alrighty, so the next sort of important concept that I'd like to talk about is the bash history. And this basically is more or less a log file that stores all of the commands you have run. Well, more or less all. That depends on some factors. But more or less all of the commands you have run on your system. Now, what you do real quick is you can just type history and you can see all of the commands that have been run on the system. Now, that might be cool to look at. And again, by default, it's stored in this bash history file in the user's home directory. And again, we can see the same sort of information where we just have all of the commands. One thing, the bash history is written to once a terminal is closed. So as you can see, we don't have very much. So the information here ends in foreground, but down here it ends in cat bash history and then ls and history. So once the history is once this terminal is closed, it should write the history in memory to that bash history file. So that is those are the two places the bash history is stored. Now again, say we want to run ls. Now say we want to run the exact same command again. What you can do is hit the up arrow and you can scroll through this bash history. So as you can see, ls was the command I ran most previously, but if I want to get back up to that CD boot camp, I can hit the up arrow again. And this can scroll through commands you've already run. But that's pretty nice. But say I want to get all the way back up here to this cat. What I can do is run a reverse search through the command line history with Control R, and then I can type in sudo.conf, for example. And here you can see the keywords highlighted, and I've gotten back to this because it's the most recent command that uses sudo.conf. Now say I want to exit that, you could just hit Control N, but say you want to go to the previous, you can hit Control P. And as you can see, I only typed in sudo this time, and I'm just scrolling through all of the commands that sort of had it until I ran out, and so it sort of stopped that there. So that's sort of how you reverse search and sort of search through the bash history most simply. Now there are some other things. So say, for example, you want to if I could type ls/root. Now you'll get this permission denied error. Well, what you could do is go in and type sudo ls/root, but that's a lot of words. What I prefer to do is sudo bang bang. And what that will do is just rerun the previous command. This exclamation point, often called bang bang, will just rerun the previous command, and it will put sudo before it because that's what I typed in before it. So as you can see here, it is running sudo ls/root, and that would and that's just an easy way to recall the previous command. But say I want to run, say for example, I know because I can see the last command I ran that started with the letter H was history, and for some reason, and I want to run that again. A quick way I could do that is I could use the reverse search, or I could just use !H, which is, or Yeah, well, let me use C for example. That'll work better here. Say I want to use the most recent command that started with the letter C. Now what will come up is I'll cd into boot camp, which of course here doesn't work, and we are going to so it won't work because I didn't have, but so basically I tried to rerun it. It didn't work because I don't have bootcamp/bootcamp. I don't have that as a subfolder in the bootcamp folder. But as you can see, the command tried to run. But say I don't want to run the most recent command, the cd. I want to run the cat command. What I can do is just type ca, which changes the search query, and it ran the cat.bash history command here instead of the cd bootcamp. So that's a interesting way to run that from sort of your history. Now say I want to run, let's go to this again, this command, and I know exactly, and I know the number over here. I can run, you can actually run it by number. So the exclamation point 483 will run that command by number. Now another way you could do this is by looking here, and I know instead of scrolling up with the arrows, for whatever reason I want to do it like this. I can do exclamation point -2, and because I was here, what it did was it looked, instead of looking down from the top, it looked up from the bottom. So this would be -1 because it was the most recent, and this was the second most recent. So -2 would call upon that. And there are some other sort of cool things you can do with this. So let's go exclamation point, or bang bang :p. What that will do is just print the most this command to the terminal. And say I want to command 50. I don't even know what this is. Let's print this to the terminal. Or, well, whoops. It's not, it's that. So it was ls. You can print the 50th command from the bash history to the terminal. And you could do this with all of the stuff. So ca. So you can run this command off any bash history search, and that is delimited by starting with the sort of exclamation point there. So let's run, for example, this command. And what this command does is it will run using $sign here is the last argument of the commands. So say I want to rerun the previous command with, I want to run this command with the arguments of the previous command. We can do it this way through the bash history. There are a couple other ways, such as the environment variable there, and of course the alt period that we've talked about before, which, I mean, in this case, which changes with this echo command. But the alt period will do the same thing. This is just another way of doing the same thing. In Linux, there are a whole bunch of ways of doing the same thing. So let's say, for example, I run a command with a whole bunch of arguments. Let's look just back through the history to see if I have a good example of this. I don't really have a great example I'd like to. Or that's not, those aren't separate. Well, I'll just explain it, and then it's not a super common use case, but say here I'm going to list out the bash history. I want to list out these two files, so I pass these two files in as arguments, and it will display all this information about these two files. What I can do is run this query on the bash history to pull all of the arguments from the previous command. And what this will do is cat out both the bash history and the bash rc. Here we can see the bash rc file, and here we can see the bash history file. So let's just make this cleaner with so we want to ls f1 f2, and then after that we want to just cat out the contents of all of those files. Here we can see it printing the syntax that it did run, and then we can see it did cat out both of those files. Now there are other ways to do this. You can get more specific with this. For example, if you would like, you can print out the first argument, which is f1 in this instance. So this sort of syntax will print out the first argument, which again is the same as that exclamation point $sign. So we run this, and then we want to print out say the second argument. One way we can do that is just the :2, and that will pull this second argument here down. So you could do this with any number. Say we want to pull the first one, we can get file 1, and if we do 0, it'll pull the 0th, which is cat. So you can, this is another way. If for some reason you don't like bang bang, you can do exclamation point :0 to call the most recent command. Another thing you can do, say here, we can exclamation point ampersand, or is it? No, that's my bad, $sign, which will call the last argument you ran. So say f1, f2 test. What we can do is call the last argument with cat that, and it will cat out test.back. Now that's an empty file, so it doesn't really show much, but that can kind of show you what you could do. So that is sort of how to steal the arguments from previous commands, searching through this bash history file. Now another thing you can do, say you mess up a command and you have a little spelling error. What you can do is find and replace from the previous command. So for example, I flipped CNH, so I run this, and this is what is in the command already. So there, and this is what you want to change it to. So I just fixed the command, and then here you can see echo test worked, and it was able to accurately print the test as I wanted. Now, at this point, we've put a lot of things on our bash history. How do we get rid of it all? So as I said, the bash history is stored in two places. It's stored in the memory, and it's stored in the bash history file. So what we have to do to clear the bash history is run history text c, and as we can see, it's now empty. We've started a new one, and then we need to delete the bash history file, and that will delete it from memory and from disk. So that way when I close the terminal and open it again, and I run history, this is all that's in there, and there's not really anything else. And that way, and that's how you clear it. You need to do both. Otherwise, what we'll do, so say I just remove bash. Say I just remove bash history. I run the history command, well, all that information is still there. So when I close this and open it again, the information's put back in. That was in there before. Say I just clear it from here. The information's still in there because, again, the file was still written to disk. So you do need to run both of those commands to accurately control the bash history. Now there are some important variables that go along with the bash history. One that's fairly interesting, that is set by default on most systems, is this hist control. If I could spell. This variable is set to ignore space on most systems. And what that will do is if you put a space at the beginning of a line, it won't show up in the history. But say we just remove the variable completely with the unset command, we scroll up, oh, it won't be in there because it's not in the history. That's another thing. If you put a space in front of the command, it won't be in your history. So the things we use to find previous commands, like the reverse search and like scrolling up, won't work. But if we do it now, what we can see is it's there. So that's just something to keep in mind, is this hist control variable can remove I believe there's another, if I'm not mistaken, it's either all or something. Alright, I forget what exactly it is, but there's another way you can do it where you ignore the duplication of commands. And so there's one sort of final thing we can do. Let's just ls slash let's see, sh. Say this is what we want to do. We want to find this file with ls, just verify it exists. What we can do is, there are some cool things here. And remember, this colon is just running a command on the history search. What we can do is h, for example, and what this will do is remove the sort of last thing from the thing. Last thing from the path, rather. So that just strips the file. And what that will do is it'll just print the directory that the file's in. Say, we want to view the, say we do the, or let's just echo, just make it easier on myself. So echo this, and then let's echo $. Let's just get that argument again, and then T, and that will remove the path from the file. So this will just pull you down the file. And one final thing we can do here is remove the extension. So this pack new extension can be removed with this :R. And that again will just return the file without the extension. And those are some And so those are some of the things you can do with the bash history on Linux. It's pretty cool, pretty useful, and I think it can just make you work a lot easier. But that's all I had for that.